Record to cloud. Hello. Great way to start here. All right, hey, Tim here. I'm recording this time. Right? Okay. We are going to do a quick camera lesson, probably 30 minutes. Then we're going to jump into the edit room, okay? Everybody, just because. This is all for recorded for those people who didn't come in person. It's going to be a fun and practical digital media lab. We'll be in the digital media lab because none of the edit bays are set up yet.
Right.
Great question, Geronimo. Yeah, we're not going to go into the room that doesn't have any computers and doesn't have any editing software. Thank you for asking. I appreciate it. Okay. All right. I'm going to change my view to a camera that's right over here. Nick will be our camera operator for that one. Leave it on the sticks, please. Yeah. Okay. Here's the view. Okay. First and foremost, most importantly, Nick said something that we should all know at this point. Who knows what sticks are when we talk about filmmaking? The tripod, yes. Why do you think we call it sticks? Looks like 3 sticks together, right? The tripod is the perfect shape in science and in the universe, which is a triangle, strongest shape ever. Triangle is actually technically 4 triangles made together to make what shape? 4 triangles put together makes what shape? Pyramid, yes. 1 side, 2 sides, 3 sides, but hey, there's also one on the bottom. 4 triangles. All right. So what's notable about the tripod and the camera is, well, if we have a tripod like this one, we have to perfectly balance the legs so that every tripod has a leveling bubble, which you can see right here. The level bubble, you can feel free to stand and look at it, but you need to level it. A tripod like this is harder to level. Why? Nick is just trying to bend the tripod, but realistically, you have to balance the legs perfectly. So just looking at the camera, I can tell it's slightly crooked on there. Of course, our tripods are connected to the tripod via tripod plate. You can all see the tripod plate is on here on the bottom. The way the gap works is if you take out the tripod plate, it goes back on the tripod, it stays on there. Doesn't stay on the camera. All right, let me tell you all the most important thing to have as a filmmaker. Okay? I have already mentioned that there's something that I want you all to be thinking about, which is a ditty bag. It's going to be a bag of odds and ends, a ditty bag. It was before that. It was called that before that. It's, hey, for canceling the ditty bag, we have to cancel Donkey Kong's friend as well. And what? No. Still, come on, Diddy Kong Racing. He's not in Mario Kart? Yeah, well, he'll be back. Little, that's worse. How about Dinky Kong? All right. That's not important. Names are names. But so a ditty bag is just a thing that every video professional should have. And no, baby. What are some things that you think we should have in our ditty bag? If you're going on stop it, Geronimo. Baby oil, no baby oil. Yeah, like extra XLRs. I keep extra XLR cables, maybe a 5-foot or a 10-foot just in case. That's a good thing to have. What else do you think something that would be? It's something that like you need on things that you can carry that you need on every set that might be easy to lose or it's easy to keep. I keep it in my car. I have a bag. I'll bring it in. Okay, I'm not going to keep a lav or a lav in my car at all times because A, it's expensive, and B, I want to keep all my audio equipment together. So no, I'm not going to have an extra audio kit. A mixer? That's another thing that is expensive that I don't. Let me tell you, it's inexpensive. It's things I can keep in the car, so I'm not worried about heat or weather. Gaffer's tape, that's a good thing. Gaffer's tape is black tape that we'll use, that we'll put down. You can see some gaff down here. It's extremely useful in here. We'll talk more and more about it, but like C47s, clamps, scrims, little wedges of wood that we can use to like wedge things together. But the one thing that I want you all to keep in your ditty bag, or you should have in your pockets at least, if you are working with a camera, is a coin. You need a quarter. Why is that? A little twisty doodad, exactly. That's the technical term, twisty doodad. No. So our tripod plate right here, which is on the bottom, has a flathead screw on here. Okay. Yeah, a small screwdriver would be great. You could keep that in your ditty bag, but guess what? It's so much more easier to have a quarter in your pocket than a flathead screwdriver. If you have a flathead screwdriver, go for it. That's totally usable. But let me tell you, I can just put this tripod on here and lock it with my fingers. Now, I'm tightening it. Is that tight enough? Maybe, maybe not. But when we're working with thousands of dollars a camera, and a screw is all that's keeping it to our tripod plate, I am always, and I'm the type of person who will, do I have a coin in my pocket right now? No, but I am an Eagle Scout who has a flathead screwdriver. You have a quarter, that's fine. That's something to do. But for sure, flathead screwdriver is on my Swiss Army knife, and I'm gonna tighten it beyond where my fingers can, because I want to secure. It's what's going to keep my camera from falling off. Flathead screwdriver, a pocket knife. Also, let me tell you this: if you don't have that, another useful item is your keys. Your key is big enough to fit into here and be able to turn it. Now, I recommend, if we're using the keys right here, you never use the key part as a tool. Why do you think that is? Never use the pointy sharp part. Even though the pointy sharp part of the key could go in there and I could tighten it. Break it off. You could break your key, you could even bend your key. If you bend your key, you're not going to use your key anymore. But if you use the back side of the key here, which is sometimes circle, I like these ones that actually have like a point right there. Those are all useful items to put your camera onto the plate, and then it goes onto the tripod plate. Okay, Nick, you're in charge of that one. Okay, so this tripod is not balanced perfectly. So what Nick would have to do is spread the legs out, and then using the adjustments, be like, okay, maybe I need to come down. Oh, no, I need to go more up. All right, how's your balance? We're checking the balance. Maybe we need to go down a little bit here and down a little bit here, okay? Doesn't look good to me, but that's fine. Let's pan over here, Nick. All right. So those tripods are the more annoying tripods to balance. What's great is most of our tripods are like this tripod right here, which maybe go wider so we can see the tripod. Please, I might not. Our tripod legs, even if my camera is definitely crooked at this point, right? What's great is right here, under here, the tripod head itself comes loose, and look, it has a swivel head up here. So by swiveling the head, I can find, even if the legs are one leg tall, one leg small, and I'm going to do that. Yeah, not traditionally. So this is a studio tripod, which has wheels on the tripod legs, which are called casters. And this is for like in our studio so that we can do these pan movements. It's way more traditionally for in there. We're gonna work in the field and out. You're gonna way more work with our tripods without wheels. You probably only see wheel tripods here. And what's notable about them is they have locks down here so that we can lock them down. Look, I'm using my key to tighten this tripod plate, which I noticed was pretty not tightened. So now it's tightened. Especially this camera is a lot more expensive than this, the new Canons are way more expensive than the old Sonys. And now let's take a look at everything that's going on here. So Nick, when I point to things, I'd like you to see. So we have our camera on our tripod plate onto the tripod. This is the safest way to leave your camera. Now, what are a couple things I want to tell you about the tripods to know? There are two actions on your tripod. When your camera, which is on your tripod, moves left or right, who knows what this motion is called? And I'll do it right now. Oh, it's going to be a wheelie, right? Okay. Imagine it's a locked tripod. If my camera, and you can see what it looks like on the screen over here, if I'm doing this, what is this motion called? It is not swiveling. Even though that's a descriptive thing, swiveling. Hey, can you make it wide enough so you can see the camera and what we're seeing in there? Yeah, thank you. Pivoting is not the term, the professional term. Pan, yeah. Panning is a left or right movement. So when I say pan left, you can see that I'm going to do that. If I say pan right, I'm going to do that. When we're camera operators, what kind of pan is this called, Drum? Panning left versus that type of pan. Slow and fast. A whip pan is a fast motion going from one spot to another. A slow, smooth pan is going to be this. Now, when we're filming and we want to pan and we want to do as slow as possible, we want one continued motion. It's definitely something to move, right? We're going to do a slow, solid movement. And then in the edit, we're going to choose when to go, cut. But if my pan is like this, it's a stutter stop. You see it a lot like in drone operators when they're trying to move their gimbal. Anytime you do a movement with your camera, I want it to be intentional. And even if you mess up, just keep the movement going until you stop or go. That's just a little advice to go. Take this out. That. Okay, talked about pan. Can you guess what this motion is called? Whoa. What was the scan? Okay, you're thinking pan and scan. That is not the instance. That's more for like when you are displaying it on your TV. But a camera movement, there's panning left and right, and then there's up and down. Who knows what? Tilt. Tilt and pan, okay? So if I say tilt up, we're gonna tilt up. If I say tilt down, that's tilt down. Or if your camera's like this and I say, hey, can you tilt? Yeah, I'm probably going to either go up or go down. If I'm already pointing down, I'm probably going to tilt up to the subject, right? So tilt up and tilt down. I'm tilting down. Again, I want slow, fluid movements. This is a whoop tilt. But realistically, I want to go as smooth as possible. And if I get like a bump or something, I'm probably not, okay, I'm going to start over. Cool. So now we know tilt, we know pan. Also, what's interesting to know is take a look at our thing here. We talked about framing, right? Well, look, in the display, this is displaying everything that I'm seeing in my viewfinder. The piece that connects to the camera that allows the camera operator to look at it is called the viewfinder. That's, huh? I'm getting there. I'm getting there. Thanks, Geronimo. Just jumping the gun. He knows something and wants to share. But just note that, like, with my viewfinder display, I have the thirds on. So that actually is going to help me because I inherently can be like, okay, I'm going to put Geronimo on the third, and it's actually showing me where on the third I can do it. And if he's moving, I can adjust a little bit. You know, its movements, and we can try to keep it. The grid just helps me with my framing. All right, since Geronimo wants to talk about it.
You ever go like left and right, like on the side, like
you absolutely
tilt it? You know?
Yeah, you can absolutely mess with if you want to.
Is that also called tilting?
It's not called tilting. Dutch angle. This is called a Dutch angle. So yeah, we're going to do a Dutch angle left or right. I can really, if the tripod was locked down, we could do something like that. In our acting class, we're recreating a Dutch angle, and we used a monopod. So it's a tripod with one leg, basically, a monopod usually for still, but it allows us to do more tilting and panning. Okay, on wheels. Yes, Nick.
When we did my genre project, I think I did that as well.
Dutch angles, yeah. It really, the type of angles and the shots you pick help express your feelings and everything. Okay, now we have the camera on wheels. What is this? What is this movement? It's push? Why were you answering? We did that. Pushing in and pushing out, right? What's it called in filmmaking terms, though? Okay, a zoom is we're adjusting the lens, right? We have a zoom lens and we're zooming in and out. That's what zoom. So zoom in means go closer, zoom out means go wider with our camera, and that's a physical action of the lens, which we'll talk about in a bit. But if we have the camera on the tripod and it's moving towards a subject, what do you think this is called? My guesses? In and out, Silas. Dolly, that's it. Dolly in and out. Now a dolly is a physical, because we have on wheels, we're able to dolly in and dolly out. But we actually have what's called a dolly in the filmmaking class. We'll use rails. It's a little like skateboard like motion thing that the camera tripod sits on, and you can dolly in and dolly out. It's a straight forward and backward motion. What is this? No. Gary, you want another air ball? What do you think? It's moving the camera left to right. This is a more obscure one. Say dolly again. It's not a dolly.
It's slide.
Not slide. Hummer trucks? Yes. It's not a tracking shot. Tracking shots are when you follow a subject. If you got up and walked around the room, or Geronimo got up and walked around the room, and so my tracking shot is following Geronimo, keeping him in frame, trying to pan or tilt or whatever, and I lost Geronimo. If you're on wheels, you move left and right, it's called trucking. Hummer truck, right? That was the hint. Trucking, left and right, dolly, in and out, forward and backwards. Panning is left and right, tilt is up and down motion. All right, we talked about zoom. Looking at our camera right here. My camera right here is a computer. It has machinery. It has a microchip and a sensor, and just like old-fashioned cameras, it's taking multiple images at the exact same moment, recording it digitally, unlike a new old computer. But every image that's recorded, when it's projected back or played back, there's 20, right now we're set to 23.98 frames per second. That means we're taking 23.98 frames, pictures, single still pictures, and putting them together. When we play it back, that would equal 1 second of video motion. Now, why 23.98? That is what has been determined. That is a filmmaking frame rate. So we're talking about frame rates. Filmmaking frame rate that most appeals to our human eye, that provides what seems like the optimal motion. Now, if we can shoot more frames or less frames. What happens if we shoot less frames? What type of motion do you think we get back? If I shot 3 frames per second, and it's me walking from here in a second, what would our image look like? Slow and choppy. Well, not necessarily slow, because ultimately, when we projected it back, it would take 3 frames per second. So that would mean that frame 1, frame 2, frame 3, right? So click, click, click. So maybe in that motion, when we played back in a second, yeah, it would be like this, and then I would pop, and then I would pop over here, play back for a second. What happens if I do 100 frames per second? Super smooth, it gives you like an uncanny valley. It gives us a lot more information. We just have a lot more information. When we play it back, if we take that 100 frames and we take those 100 frames and we put them in a 24 frame per second sequence in our editing system, a lot more frames result in what? If we take 100 frames that we shot over 1 second, we put it into a timeline that's 24 frames, our 1 second becomes 3 seconds. It's 24 times, about 4 seconds. So then when we play back, what will that look like? Slow motion, 100%. That's how the early filmmakers figured out slow motion. Because do you know what old-fashioned cameras look like? Do you know how they determine frame rate? Frame rate, yeah, exactly. So cameras were cranked. So the amount of motion that the filmmaker or the cameraman was operating would determine how many frames per second. You ever watch an old-fashioned black and white movie, and they do seem like it's like fast motion almost, because it's an ununiformed cranked movie. So they're like 15 frames per second, 20 frames per second, and it gives it like kind of a fast motion-y vibe, or like a drop frame vibe, because it's projecting at 24 frames per second. So the first person to figure out, like, hey, if I double crank, if I do like 48 frames per second and we play it back at normal, because they're, back then it wasn't ones and zeros on a computer, it was actually coming out on film stock, actually developed images. When they play it back, the projectors would still play at the same speed. So they realized that's how they invented slow motion. Was someone's like, hey, what happens if I just crank it really hard? Right, Geronimo? It wasn't Charlie Chaplin, wasn't the first person to do it. Do you know who the first person was that invented slow motion? Huh? Yeah. I actually am not thinking who's the first slow motion person. That's not what I'm prepared to talk about right now. Okay. Yeah, why did I bring that up? I was trying to get out of like saying cranking it. I think I realized how many times I said cranking it. Okay. Okay, so we're talking about frames per second. What's great about our cameras is, like, if you do look up here, we have 23.98 frames per second. We can go into our menu and adjust or we should be able to, right? Like we can currently. Our firmware is not updated on the new cameras, but we should be able to record at 59.8 frames per second, which will give you a slow motion effect. Our other cameras can do that. If you 200 frames per second. You ever watch video and see them like shoot an apple with a bullet? That's probably 1,000 frames per second, high speed camera. Now, what's the problem with upping? Why don't we shoot everything in high speed? Why am I asking you? Because what do you think the problem is when we record in a higher frame rate? Why don't we just record everything in slow mo and then just fast motion?
Well, let's crank it up.
I think so. Couldn't change. Oh, but we can go up. Oh, okay. So great. That's what I was just about to do. Oh, okay, there we go. We can go. This is slow. This is a slow motion. So like 59 or 29.97. 29.97 is a standard TV frame rate. It's not really standard anymore because once we went completely digital, because video, TV used to be shot on video tape, whereas movies were shot on film. So the old-fashioned video cameras like VHS tapes would do 29.97. We can still simulate that, but it's not necessary. Pretty much everything is produced in 24 frames per second. Yeah, Bryce.
Why all those things like
Good question. Instead of just you can work in that area, but this is the traditional rate that the industry standard was put at. So 24, you can go up and work in a 24 frame environment in Premiere, when we talk about that in just a little bit. But industry standard, that is why these numbers are this way. I don't have a better answer other than this is what they do. This is why it's been the choice. Okay. Now we're setting, our settings are for
What happened? That's
you said exposure got worse. What does that mean? Yes. Now our exposure might not have gotten worse. All our exposure settings are the same, but the image, the amount of light that the camera is taking in has been reduced because the same, all your settings, the same amount of light is feeding lights are nearly 1.5 times more frames. So that means you need, so if you're going to shoot high frame rate images, you have to use more light. So when we're shooting that apple being hit by a bullet, and we're shooting 1,000 per second, need a lot of light because it's going to really darken your image. So that is a factor that you can see just with our settings right now.
And why can't I just use like this too?
You can. But what do you mean? No, not necessarily. No. But adding more light should be a factor.
Like that's not natural. Like outside, it's fun.
Outside's fine, but LED and studio light should be fine too. Thanks, Rob. Okay, so that's frame rate. Okay, other things to note that's on our display. These are all good information for you to know when you're going to be touching our cameras and using it to record your PSAs and stuff. Other things to note is looking down here. We have flashing right here. We talked about our white balance, right? On Monday, we see flashing A56K plus 0. So what does this mean? Who remembers what white balance. Yeah, right. Color of the light, yeah. Yes. Daylight, yeah. 56 is set to daylight. So if we look at our image, our subjects, even though we're not under daylight, our subjects then end up want to look. So let's take a look at drawing almost got mad. You could be right. Oh, this white balance up here. Sorry, new camera. All right, what's up, dude? All right, it's a problem. All right. It's auto. See, I had a feeling. Nice to meet you. White balance. Hey, white balance. Okay. Okay, so you can see I can adjust my white balance just by going through. So 56 is a standard, and you can see there's daylight right there. There's 32. So 32 is more of interior light. Look at our subjects. And we can absolutely see 32 versus 56. Warmer, cooler. Warmer, cooler, right? And then we can actually go through and what we have auto white balance, where the camera's going to do its own thing and say, like, hey, with the combination light, you can see it's manually adjusting as we sit. We can see, like, okay, so our light is combination light because the door is spilling daylight from the window, and also we have our fluorescent lights. So you can see it's actually manually adjusting the image as it goes. Why do you think for this project, go full auto if you want. But why do you think I don't ever want to shoot with auto or anything? If they get up and move, it's going to adjust. I would rather have it set and fix everything in post. Or I want it to be warm, or I want it to be cool. The more that I can control as the filmmaker, the better. Now, remember what I said, being auto here, right? Auto. Well, what's interesting is K is Kelvin right there. I can actually manually go in and adjust my Kelvin. Auto white balance is going to adjust, but I also have A and B right here. Now, what's fun about A and B is you can preset your white balance, or we can white balance on set. B is going to be set. So basically, what B is looking for, I'm going to have my subject right here. Hold my white card, my balance card. And then to do an auto white balance or do a manual white balance, I'm going to zoom in and tell my camera, this is what the color white looks like. I'm going to focus it. Then I'm going to have it manually white balance. And there we go. B is going to go like that. You can drop it now. You can see what your faces look like. You zoom out. This is the proper color temperature for this room for them right now, how they're lit. You can see that it's actually 5670K. Now, what's notable about our manual white balance, what's cool, is I can click here and I can scrub through. But now, if I go back to B should remember, as long as there's a battery on, B is going to remember that this is the B setting. So I can always go back, hey, we're shooting in the same room with the same level of light. This is going to be my white balance. what you might have noticed is there's an A and a B. So this camera can memorize 2 custom white balances. Okay. That's a good thing to know about. Yes. Yeah. Cool. Well, so we're white balancing. If we put blue, you want to see what happens? Watch what happens. I'm going to tell my camera that the curtain, by manually white balancing, I'm going to tell the curtain that this is white. Oh, it's not even going to do it. It said that is not the color white. So it assumed it was daylight. It went back to daylight. It's like, that's not the color white. But let's see what happens if it just tries to white balance off the Nike right there. Camera, I tried. A dumber camera would have thought that the blue was white, right? Like it would have just, kind of weird. But look, just using a little bit of white, it is going off. The camera's smart enough to know that like exactly right there. So 56, 70. That's not that far off from our proper white balance. In fact, it's exactly the same. So the level of cameras are like way better. So all you have to do is have a little bit of white, and it's going to be able to program that. Now, notable though too is if we pan across Michael, we can see that Michael has a different level of light. Not as much spill probably from there. Michael, let's see white balance over how much different our manual white balance would be over here. I probably could. In fact, yes, good call. Oh, excuse me. All right. All right. It's a little bit different than you might when you drop it. We can see with Michael versus, so it's the +1 is really the only difference. So that little bit of spill costs +1, -1. You can see the two adjust. It's barely hitting those. But that is manual white balance. Okay, we'll turn back. We'll give everyone a break. Give a chance to be unscared. Okay. Other notable things right here, ND on and off. Who remembers what I said ND meant? Talked about it with light yesterday. No. But that is not in camera terms. ND stands for neutral density. It refers to a neutral density filter. Who knows what that could represent in our camera? When we use it, let's take a look. I am going to turn on the neutral density filter. Okay, I just turned on 2 stops. Now we're 4 stops. Now we're 6 stops. Now we're off. What do we think that could represent? When will we use that?
Fade to black. At the end of a movie or end of a scene.
End of a movie, I'm going to tell you right now, we would never do that in camera. Why is that? Because we want to control that out of camera. So fade to black, I'll teach you how to do fade to black in the editing class. That's all post-production. So they used to do that in old-fashioned movies where they close the iris and it would be a circle and then would go away. That was them literally closing it because they didn't have, the only editing that they could do was with a razor blade and taping the movies together. That's how they used to make edits back in the old days, is they would pull out all of the film and they would cut, like if you wanted to make a fade, you would cut the frame diagonally, put it to the next diagonal, and that's how you fade it up. We'll talk more in the editing class. Let me showcase here this. Wait, watch the screen, watch the screen. All right. What do you notice about the outside? Blown out, overexposed, right? The amount of information that we have is nothing. There's too much light coming in, so we get no definition, even though our eyes are much better cameras than actual cameras, because our eyes can actually interpret and adjust accordingly to see outside. If I put my ND, my neutral density filter, to 2 stops, what do we notice? It's a little better, right? We start to get more details. All right, and that's 2 stops versus
Like the inside.
so. Yeah. So our subject inside got darker, but our light outside got more clear. That neutral density filter is like sunglasses for your camera. It's basically something that's going in front of the lens sensor to reduce the f-stop. The f-stop is the amount of light that we are taking into our camera. An ND filter is great when you're outside, when it's a bright day. You're never going to really use an ND filter inside. It's just your camera only has so many settings to reduce light. We just definitely note that when we have stuff outside and inside, we went from seeing massive lit, but the back's outside too bright. Now there's no detail in the face, right? You can barely, that's not a usable image. Right? Unless we're doing my mystery thing. So let's turn.
See the bill at the.
Like the interviews with the monsters.
Yeah. So we have, just so you know, we have different stops. Professional, like that's built-in ND filter for the camera. So it's basically the camera is having the ND filters come down to block the lens's sensor. The other way is you could get physical ND filters that screw onto the front of the lens and will act as an additional way to stop the light coming through. All right. ND filter F. Who knows what the F is? F 2.8. Okay. The F stop. What's the F stop? Someone says, how much light is being let in? Our camera lens right here, and our camera is like our eyeballs, right? So think of this as a technical machine version of our eyes. And the f-stop would represent, and is called the iris of the camera. The iris is our pupils. What happens if I shoot a bright light into your face? What happens to your eyeballs? Dilates, right? So your pupils get smaller, bigger. They get smaller. You shoot a light in your eye, they get smaller. They close down. So that means even though the bright light's coming in your eyes, it is getting smaller so that it lets less light in. So if we close down the iris, it's going to let down less light. Now here's the thing to know about the f-stop. When we close down the light, the number gets bigger. There's always the counterintuitive thing. All right, our camera's going to go down to f20. Basically, we're shutting down the amount of light that comes into the camera. So, okay, so basically nothing out here, but if we shut down there, hey, look, now we can kind of see outside better, right? Maybe we're shooting outside and we want to have our f-stop all the way down. The only problem is the f-stop can only go to 22 on this camera. So that means, and if we look outside, we can see that the Sky is still what color? White. It means it's still overexposed. So this would be a situation where I'm going to close my iris. I'm going to put on, the ND filter. You can see there, it's actually not a very clear day. It's hot and kind of muggy. But so then I would put the ND filter on, and then I can adjust my image by using the wheel right here and actually open. I have my ND filter. I'm going to open up the stops more. Why would I do that? It's going to give my image a different feel. I definitely want to try to keep the sky somewhat blue, but also I'm adjusting how much light's coming into the camera. So essentially closing my iris and then putting sunglasses on so that I can look at something really bright. Now, if we look out there, it's not really blue. So the clouds and everything are a factor. Does that make sense to everybody? If I say open the iris, your number's going to go down, your f-stop's going to go down. If I say close your iris, close the go down, your number's going to go up. And each one of these f-stops represents a stop. So when we saw that ND filter says 6 stops, it's already closing your camera down 6 stops. So if I fully open the iris of my camera, which this one goes all the way to 2.8, then I have the ND filter on, it's like adding 6 stops, which we can see that the stops are 2.8, 3.2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So basically, and if I turn off that's the ND off, and I'm already 6 stops down. Numbers higher, it's down. It's basically putting me 12 stops down effectively. Makes sense? That's the math part of that. All right. We can adjust the image even more, controlling in our camera. Notably, what's interesting about your f-stops is when we close our f-stops, we are making a physical change to our image. That means that the camera lens is if you look in the camera lens when you do the iris, it actually is letting in physically less light through the lens to the sensor. But what if it's so dark? Like what if we need more light in our sensor, right? So if we need more light, we would open up our iris all the way to 2.8. All right, so we're taking in a lot of light already. But we also have an ISO here. Who knows what ISO is? Also known as gain. This is digital light. So because our computer is because our camera's computer, we can add digital light to our image, which means that we add a light source, not like a light source. It'll increase all of the volume, the vibration. So if I'm going to all right. That's the lowest our ISO will go. So we can see that 160 with 2.8. So we're letting in as much light through the lens, where we are adding no digital light this way. So notably, let's look at our bigger, brighter source. We can still see that it's still blown out. It's not quite as blown out because before we had 1,000 ISO day. But let's check it out. Now we can see with our all of our ND filter on at 6 stops. That's the image that we can get of outside. So turn out ISO as low as possible, our gain as low as possible, and our f-stop as open as possible. And our ND filter goes down, this is what we can get. Again, we can crank our f-stop down and adjust the image more. But why would I want to use ISO? Why would I want to use gain? What do you think?
This might not, but I use it.
ISO is useful in most it can be useful in a lot of situations. But like for example, we have our on lights, we have our fluorescent lights on. And if our ISO looks like this in class, it's not really usable, right? So because it's a technology we can use. This is out of the lens and into the sensor. I'm going to turn my ISO on, and let's just go up back to where it was. We had it at about 1,000 here, right? There you go. That's 1,000. Of course, we have ISO. Why don't we, you know what? Why don't we just use ISO? Let's go do our ISO. Look, we can make it, again, our image is now overexposed, but we can adjust the amount of light. Like, hey, let's close our f-stop down. All right, we have a good image. We have 25,000 ISO. What do we notice? You might need to come up and look at the image, but what do we notice when our ISO is this high? Why don't we just shoot everything like this? Grainy noise. Yes, those are both correct terms. If you notice, specifically, look right here. It feels like the wall. It feels like there's bugs or something crawling on the image right now. That is because we are forcing the camera and the computer and the camera to add too much fake light. And the sensor is doing its best, but every single pixel on the screen that we're looking at is one single pixel. And the computer is going in and making the choice that this pixel is white, or this pixel is gray, or this pixel is the amount of colors that you can do. But because we have that much amount of light, the camera is constantly changing. It can't decide. So it's actually pulsating back from one color of white to one color of gray, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. That's causing digital noise. We see digital noise a lot in low level environments. Think of like found footage horror films, right? Horror films have a lot of noise in it because they shoot very low light and rely heavily on our ISOs, our gains to support it. So in these situations, I always say the ISO is fine to use, but you have to find that happy medium of where you want to. It is better to mess with your f-stop and open your f-stop. It is better to work with lighting sources and use lights than rely on your ISO, because you can't really fix noise in post-production. You can in our editing software. I have some noise reduction things, but it makes the images look buttery and not as crisp and as clear as you might want. The amount of light that we take into our cameras also affect our ability to focus and how much focus you have on. We're not going to talk about that today. I just want to go over the basics. So now you know what an f-stop is, what the ISO gain is, ND filter, and white balance. Those are basic things on here. Let's just quickly go over all of the other information that's on the screen since we're talking about it. Then we'll go jump over to editing. Notably, we have the 24 millimeters. That is our zoom. We can see that it changes when we zoom in and zoom out. We can look at our camera right here, and notably we can pay attention to the different types of rings on here. Our focus, this is our zoom ring. So this is a variable lens. So that means it can adjust the amount of length that our frame is. So the bigger the number, the more closer you are into the subject. So that is 105. This is 24. The smaller the number, the wider the frame. So I would say, hey, go grab me the 24 to 105. That means I want a variable lens, and notably the numbers on it represent the length of the lens. All right. So a longer lens like this can be a closer, more telescopic lens. This is our zoom ring. This is my focal ring. Hopefully you can see in the focus. It has some focal assist, but it's not on manual. It's not on automatic focus. I'm on manual focus. That is something that I will always advocate for is don't do autofocus, do manual focus, because nothing could ruin a shot more than the autofocus getting confused and focusing on the wrong person. Or maybe I want a cool shot. Maybe this shot with fill in it isn't about fill, it's actually about my big goal. There you go. But the camera might assume like I want the person's face in the shot, right? So that is why I advocate against manual focus, okay? So your lens has a focal ring and a zoom ring. This has a manual f-stop too, but will you use the digital f-stop? I'm gonna wait till after to show you that. Okay, notably too, we have the numbers. Let's see what else. We can see under the 81, that is the zoom length, it has MF. What does MF stand for? Annual focus, yeah. Correct. Also, we can see the 23.98 frame rate. Next to it is time code. Time code is the burnt-in number that represents the frame as we go. I don't have media in here. We can also see next to right here, it says I don't have any CF cards and I don't have any SD cards. This camera takes two different types of media, SD cards or express CF cards. We'll talk about that in the future. I'll show you that. Also notable is we're seeing bouncing up and down as I'm talking. Can you guess what that could possibly be? Are talking? Audio levels. Audio levels, right? And there's no microphone connected to it other than the built-in microphone. How good a quality do you think the built-in microphone is going to be in a camera like this? We call that our scratch track. It is a reference track. We can actually plug in mics into this. We don't have it right now, but we have the ability to plug in XLRs, jacks into this, but we won't do that. We'll use our externals to record our audio that way, just because it's a better, more reliable option, more control. That way the camera op doesn't have to monitor audio as well for these ones. Now the Sony's plug in directly and you can wear a headset, no problem. Okay, under our time code, every time you hit record, the time code is going to run and each frame will have its own unique time code. So it's a way that we will take a look at in our editing software about that. Okay, under it, 99 minutes, and it has a little battery icon. You can possibly guess what that is, 99M. Yeah, it's our battery life, right? And so far, these are brand new batteries, very accurate. Some cameras, depending on how old they are and how old the batteries are, I've seen cameras jump from like 90% to 30% in like 5 minutes. So that's a factor to know, especially when you're using older equipment.
What's the total life of the battery in that camera?
So you can see right here our battery, 99 minutes, and it's about 3 of the 4 quarters. I think it's 100 minutes on this battery. It's been going since we. Well, it's more than 100. Yes, sorry, yeah, right. 120 would be my guess. We can pop on the new battery. Yeah, about 2 hours on that. That's pretty sufficient, and we have 4 batteries per camera for this type. Under it, we have the numbers 4,096 times 2160. Who knows what that could possibly be? Resolution, yeah. So this is 4K. 4K represents 4,000, and these are numbers that represent the amount of pixels that are in our image. So 4,960 is our vertical, and 2160 is our horizontal, and the other one's vertical and horizontal. So if I say 1080, that means that's standard HD quality, and that's going to correspond 1080 by 1290. Is going to be your HD, and then 720 is standard. We're going to shoot in 4K. You might shoot in HD. You might shoot in a higher resolution and work in a smaller smaller editing environment. We'll talk about that in the future. And then below it is YCC 422 10-bit. That is the codec that it's recorded in. Now you can go in and change your settings to record in different qualities. And why would we do that? Why would we do that? Well, it's all space saving, right? You could decide that, like, hey, I'm going to shoot in log, or I'm going to shoot in a 8-bit. I don't need as much quality. What do you think shooting in less quality gets you?
Saves on space.
Saves on space. Digital space or hard drives, that's the number one thing that we can shoot forever. That's why we cut and everything. Also, 180 notably is the shutter angle. A digital piece in your image, you can adjust the shutter angle. I recommend not playing with this. You're only going to really use 90 or 180. It's going to affect the amount of light that comes in. If you turn the shutter angle down really low, it's fun stuff to do if you want to do like a road trip or something. Like, oh, I kissed the toad or whatever. The friendship would be happy. Okay, any questions or comments about this? Yes.
How many questions? I was thinking like little thing, physically dead, one flat. I'm just wondering how you get to like all these and change all those. Just like a button and scroll.
Okay, so that's a good question. How can I adjust all of these things? Well, we're going to have plenty of opportunity for you to come up on the camera. Depending on what you want to change, is either there's a menu right here that comes up, and I can go in and format my cards. I can go and change the frame rate. I can change the frame size. I can do all that. Or if my ISO, there's actual ISO button over here. If you want to come up and take a look. Number 5 is ISO. Number 6 is shutter. You can see there's peaking waveforms. ND filters are right here. Our white balance is down is 9 and 10, and then the f-stop is this spinning wheel right here. Everybody, you can come up and take a look at the camera and push the buttons if you want in just a second. Let me show you the most important thing to know. There's a dial right here. There's a dial right here. It's currently set to camera. I just turned it off. There you go. Off and on, and then media, you can review your media. I turned it off because I wanted to show you something. I pushed a release button right here. And notably, I now have the lens. I would not like you to take off the lens unless you ask. Each types of lenses, this is a Canon 24-105. It has different settings and different options. It has an autofocus option on the physical lens. It has different stability modes. You can play around with that if you want to see. We keep the settings nice. I never want you to lose this important piece, which is the lens cap. It goes on the lens. If you turn it on, it's black. It's because you have the lens cap. I suggest I take it off. I almost always put it in my back pocket if I'm the operator. It's just my personal way to remember where it is. That's why I was shocked when I reached back and was like, oh, and then I put it over there for some reason. So screwed myself up. You can see this is what the lens looks like. Now, because it's connected to the camera, I don't have it with me, but there's a lens. This is the lens cap, and the lens hood goes on the back here. It clicks on, and it protects this. If this glass gets scratched or this glass gets scratched, the lens is useless because it will adjust your image and it will always affect it poorly. So we're always going to protect this and have to let this be exposed to the air, to dust. This is where dust may get on. When we're going to clean the lens, we're going to spray. Grant will pull out his lens cleaning kit, and we'll shoot air to clean the lens. Because if you go to clean the lens and you're like, oh, I'm just gonna use my shirt to clean the lens, your shirt's not gonna be the right material to clean the lens. It can scratch the lens gets scratched, and it'll affect the image forever. So if you want to clean the lens, yes. The glasses things are what we use. We have official lens cleaning material in our cleaning kit. Those glasses things are good. All right. I'm super nervous because I'm protecting my lenses. But right here, right in here, is our camera's sensor. We have a cap that goes on the top to protect the sensor. This is even more important than the lens, because the sensor is the computer, the way it interprets all the light that's coming through. If a piece of dust gets on the sensor, it can ruin all the images. You'll be like, oh, something's messed up with my lens. But I've had a piece of dust land on the sensor and it messed, like we had to send it in clean to have it be there. So we want to expose this as less as possible because particles of dust could get in. I also don't want direct sunlight to ever hit my sensor because it could burn out pixels. So that's why I'm covering it, just so you know. There's a button here to release the lens. It clicks and then you have to turn. It made a click noise when I put it in. All right. Yes, Philip.
Quick question. So you can't really use the same terms for like a still or an SLR camera, like a wide angle or telephoto. You have to be very specific as to the.
So based on, can I use still camera lenses on my camera? You can if it has the same mount. Now, that's the problem is different cameras have different mounts. Looking at our Canon here, this is a C mount. There's micro 2/3 mount. There's micro CF mounts. It's all just depending. So you can absolutely use old camera lenses on here. Lenses are pretty exchangeable. They even make adapters if you have like a small camera, bigger one. The biggest factor that's going to come into your lenses is there's going to be maybe a crop factor that comes in to your lenses. So based on your mount and your sensor, it's going to be how much information your camera lenses are going to be able to provide. So if there's a crop factor, and I have a 24:105, the crop might affect it so that my images are all closer. So at 24, it looks more like a 36, right? So that's what I mean by crop. Is it might not, because of how the lenses are set up, it might not be able to take in the full ability of the lens if you're doing a really wide lens. You could do a really wide angle, like bubble lens that'll give you a fisheye feel. You can absolutely do it. And just based off of like, it really comes down to glass. It comes down to how it's designed for the optimal option for video. I talked about variable lenses since we were talking about lenses. Do you know what a lens is called if it only has, well, it doesn't zoom, it only has one frame of size, huh? A fixed lens or a prime lens. It's going to be a lens that only has one length. Why would I use that? Why wouldn't I get all zoom lenses? What do you think? And in fact, in our filmmaking class on Friday, we'll never use a zoom lens. Not one time. We'll always change the lenses to be different lengths. Why do you think that is? A zoom? Go ahead. Better capture a certain length. Because the variable, it has to adjust for your frame size. So you actually are going to get much crisper, cleaner images through a fixed lens. A zoom lens has utility. I have one zoom lens that when I zoom in, it gets darker. So using the prime lens, you get better lens, better glass, and it's fixed. The only problem is you can't zoom for something like this, when we're shooting news or something, you want a variable lens. Glass is also important. How it's designed is also important. You can use a lens that's $100. Use a lens that's $2,000. Lenses that they use on movie sets, $20,000. $20,000 lenses. Okay? And it's all the size of the lens and the glass and how it's designed. Those are all factors. Can you capture something perfectly good on your camera lens? Probably. But can it look better? If you are a great filmmaker and you want to shoot something really cool, you might want to use the $20,000 lens, right? So let's get up. We're going to end the Zoom for right now. Let's get up. I'm going to encourage you all to play with the camera, and then we'll go over to the media lab to do editing. All right. Delphina, if you want to, we're going to pause, and probably about 20 minutes we'll jump to the editing bay. Goodbye.